We go back to the Sicko Satchel and answer whether LaMelo Ball is still ready to be the leader of this franchise. Then we'll profile JT Thor, the More Thor movement. Is it still a thing? That's all today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That does include YouTube. There is Doug Branson once again. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio, 92.7 FM. We're going back to the Sicko Satchel to lead us off here. Our silly season. We're just letting the people do our work for us.
We appreciate it.
That's what we do. We're good at that. We're really good at that.
Which, you say that in some kind of derogatory way, and to that I say, listen, we give a lot to the fan base, to the Sickos. We deliver each and every day delicious Hornets content for them to consume, put in their gullets. Mm-hmm. The least that the Sickos could do is occasionally throw us a bone and give us some content ideas.
That's right. You're right. I should not be as chastising as I am. I'm not trying to belittle our own podcast by that.
And they're very smart Sickos. These questions are, every time I'm not surprised, but I'm just elated that our audience comes through with really intelligent questions. Honestly, sometimes too intelligent. I really wish some of these questions were a little sillier. So I'm challenging the Sickos now. We're in the silly season. And all of these serious questions are great, and we're glad to answer them in the best way that we can. But I would also, like some silly questions as well. So challenge.
Okay,
issued.
you're the keeper of the Sicko Satchel. I don't want to steal your thunder. Who wrote in, and what do they write about?
Aaron writes in, how serious do you guys think LaMelo is about continuing to be the leader of the Hornets franchise? Between the resistance to ankle braces and lack of communication with the media and fans, it has left me second-guessing his motivation to win for Charlotte. I hope this is not the case. Thoughts?
Okay. One, how serious do you think LaMelo is about continuing to be the leader of the Hornets franchise? To that, I will answer, I don't know. I don't know whether LaMelo wants to be a leader. I have zero clue. That requires knowing him personally and getting his thoughts away from the podium and away from the microphone. We did this a lot with Cam Newton in Carolina, right? I actually think Cam Newton was a leader of this team. I think Cam did absorb all of the responsibility that was on the Panthers' shoulders to try to move forward into the NFL postseason, whatever.
Yes,
right?
But he didn't go for the fumble. Walker.
Yeah, that's true. I know.
Leaders go for the fumble.
Yeah, that's true. But despite all of the questioning of whether he was ready to be a leader, despite being the quarterback, the most important position of the team, like, did you need to be a leader? I think Cam was. I think people still have that same type of issue with LaMelo. He's the point guard. He needs to be the leader of the team, especially with him having been the first good thing to happen to this franchise after Kemba Walker left, right? So you move on from Kemba. You need a star. You get the third overall selection. LaMelo falls to you, and it's clearly 100% the right choice. So you select LaMelo. The guy is so much fun through the first 2 years. He actually gets injured his rookie season, but still wins Rookie of the Year, gets to an all-star appearance. The last couple of years, it hasn't worked out. Does LaMelo want to be the leader? Have we ever heard him say that he does and that he relishes that opportunity? That's kind of my question. I don't know if we've ever heard him say outright in a way that was convincing, yeah, I'd care about being the leader of this team more than anyone else. Anytime Steve Clifford or somebody else would talk about who the leader is, they'd point to Miles Bridges as the vocal leader, right? If Brandon Miller is also vocal and a really good basketball player that's young and we care about him being a foundation piece, Doug, I would flip it. I don't know if we can know if LaMelo truly wants to be the leader, but also does he need to be might be a more fair question.
Well, in football with the quarterback position, that almost feels like you need to be a leader. Like I feel like leadership is sort of baked into that position. In basketball, I don't really know that leadership is baked into the point guard position, whether you have sort of a mid-tier point guard, an all-star point guard, or an all-NBA point guard. I think that basketball IQ, like you have to have a point guard that sort of understands the game, and then if it's an all-star and all-NBA point guard like LaMelo has the potential to be, then he has to have sort of otherworldly instincts in terms of basketball IQ. And I think LaMelo has all of that. He doesn't necessarily need to be a leader, but if there was a lack of leadership on the team elsewhere, then you would almost have to expect him to take a leadership role if he was going to be the highest paid player on your team, which he will be starting next season, pending whatever happens with Miles Bridges. But you expect him to be the highest paid player. And if there was no other leadership, then you would really, he'd have to be that guy. I think the drafting of Brandon Miller is really going to let LaMelo Ball off the hook in terms of being a leader of this team. Because I don't think there's any question in my mind that he has some reticence about being a leader. I think he's a hooper. He loves to play the game of basketball. I don't question his desire to win. I don't question his desire to become a better basketball player. I think all of those things are there. I think Steve Clifford has told us that, and I think he would have hinted or left that piece out if he didn't believe that LaMelo wanted to win and wanted to be on the floor and wanted to be a better basketball player. But before Brandon Miller, there was a lot of talk about handing keys over. Remember that conversation about Terry Rozier was the leader and there was going to be a handing of keys to LaMelo as he was preparing to, sign that max deal. And that conversation was awkward. It wasn't natural, and LaMelo did not seem like he was very eager to take on that role. And I don't think that LaMelo sees that piece as part of something that just is a natural part or a thing that he's really even thought about when he thought about, the future of him being an NBA superstar. I don't even think like leader was one of the words in his, if he made a vision board, I don't think leader was on his vision board. Okay. Yeah. He's one of one. He feels like he's rare. He's I think he feels like in a certain sense that like he's over in this other category that you can't, box him in certain respects. Whereas you contrast that with Brandon, and Brandon immediately talks about, I want to be a leader of this team. Because leadership is a lot of things. It's holding other players accountable. It's being a great example on and off the court. It's being able to communicate with players about, hey, here's what we love that you're doing. Here's your role. Here's my role. Here's our role. Here's an understanding of the team overall, and being able to communicate that in a political way. Those are all skills that not everyone has. And if you try to put somebody in that box that doesn't have those skills, that's actually where you get problems. When you have guys stepping up and being leaders on teams that have communication problems, that's when you have like multiple players only meetings. That's when you have a lot of conflict. That's when you have Jimmy Butler, chastising Joel Embiid because he didn't get a solid read on what kind of guy that was, and he ends up leaving Philadelphia. That's when all kinds of problems exist. So I don't have a problem with him not being a leader if that's not his natural fit, but he's got to figure this car thing out. He does have to be an example off the court. Even if he's not going to be a leader, he does, have to play by a different set of rules than maybe a player that isn't as important or being paid as much as he is has to play by.
He's still young, but also he's played 4 years in the league. I think at this point you would expect us to know pretty well him going into his fifth season, whether or not he was ready to take on that top guy. And I think if you go back to when he was on the court to his first 2 years of his career, Doug, it was Miles Bridges that was given that position. And I think he kind of took it. You saw him be the vocal guy, challenging people to play better, both offensively and defensively, but also just being the fiery, passionate dude that you could see pretty easily. Same thing with Terry. Like Terry seemed to be that guy. At least we would hear it at the podium. But also I think people really respected him hosting all of the Hornets players when they would go to Miami, and he would galvanize the troops before they would enter whatever regular season they were about to enter. It was those guys that took on that role. And look, remember, we didn't even talk about Gordon being that guy. We criticized him for not. Yeah, he didn't want to either. Like we criticized him despite making $30 million a year. He was the highest paid player on the roster. but it was pretty clear for him, right? Nobody was mistaking Gordon Hayward as the leader of this team. And that's why it doesn't feel like LaMelo is. On the court, there might be some possessions where he can hit a game winner. He stepped up defensively against Tyrese Halliburton. Like, there are times where he'll want to take over and he'll get passionate about it too. But man, it just feels like that description that you would typically think about when you're talking about the captain we've often looked at more so with a Miles, more so with the Terry. And now more people would describe Brandon Miller as the captain when you think of what that leader, what the captain, what whoever is leading everybody. Like, the evaluation would be more so with those players.
But saying all of that, I understand Aaron's frustration, if you can call it that. And I know that other fans are frustrated by LaMelo in a lot of respects, whether it be ankle braces or, they see him doing a lot of stuff off the court, and they haven't seen him do a lot of stuff on the court. And then they look at the salary, and they realize that now they've played two straight players $30+ million a year, and neither of those players have really been what you would consider a traditional leader. And I understand the frustration. You know what I'm saying? And until we see LaMelo Ball play a majority of the season, get back to all-star level play, and get this team into a postseason, because we haven't seen LaMelo Ball really in a postseason. We've seen him in a couple of play-ins, but not really in a postseason. And that's where, like, if you look at Anthony Edwards, if you look at some of these players that are making their legend right now and becoming leaders in front of our eyes, they're doing it where the stakes are the highest, not the regular season where the stakes are the highest. And Brandon Miller hasn't been that either in the NBA. He hasn't been involved in that, but he was as a college player. He played in games with major stakes. And that's where we see leaders created. That's where we see leaders who are natural leaders kind of take over and get some of those skills. So, a lot of this too is like the Hornets have to, as a team, fill out this roster such that LaMelo is able to experience that. And then we can make more judgments about who he is as a player, his desire to win, once they actually get into that position.
By the way, Brandon failed at that in college, if we're going to be honest with it. But they got to the tournament, they got beat down in the Sweet 16. Last thing here.
Did they win the SEC? Didn't they win an SEC championship?
I forget if they won the conference. I just know they lost in the Sweet 16. But what I do know too with Aaron is they also ask, I'm second guessing his motivation to win for Charlotte. That I'm going to keep separate. I don't question that. Steve Clifford did mention that, by the way, to be fair to LaMelo, that Steve wishes we could see him on the court because we don't get to see his passion to win for this team. So I put that separately, to be honest with you. I don't question that at all. I think both things can be true where you're not out in front of these guys leading the charge, but you might not be that person. But I don't question your desire to win. I still think that is well there for LaMelo. He wants to win just as much as anybody.
Sure, but if the Hornets winning, I think it's fair to say the Hornets winning has a lot to do with him being on the floor. And if he's not willing to do everything that's necessary, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it means kind of working through some issues with the ankle braces or whatever, if he's not willing to do that, and that means that he's not going to be available for as many games as they need him to be to win, then I think you can connect all of that, in some ways to a desire to win.
Maybe. Let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Sounded like a lawyer there. I was kind of making my closing argument.
Does Doug still want to be the leader of the More Thor movement?
If the ankle braces don't fit, you must have quit.
Then we'll work it out. Coming up next, JT Thor talk on Locked On Hornets. Before we move on, I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We always appreciate their support. Let's profile JT Thor, shall we? JT Thor, after drafting him a few years back in the second round out of Auburn. Remember, they selected JT because they absorbed that pick from Detroit after the Pistons traded Mason Plumlee. And so Doug, I go back to when they first drafted him. It was one of the best values of that draft. In fact, what's hilarious is that selection still the better selection than the 2 first rounders Mitch Kupchak selected in that process with James Bouknight and Kai Jones.
Unbelievable.
And yet still, it's not going well. If you would have said JT was the best pick out of that group, yeah, I think you would envision both. I think you would probably say it didn't go well with Bouknight or Kai, but it did go pretty well with JT Thor. And that's just not the case. This past season, his 3rd year in the NBA, he averaged 3.2 points per game. He did so shooting 43.7% from the field, just 34.6% from distance on a little over 1 attempt per game, and really only just over 12 minutes a contest. He started 3 games, but not a lot of run and not a lot of production when he did get some opportunity. It's been more of the same. Like, he showed us some flashes. We got excited about what he could do after his rookie season. I think a disappointing sophomore campaign, and for sure a disappointing campaign once more here in his 3rd year. I wouldn't be surprised if the guy got cut, wasn't a Charlotte Hornet much longer, Doug. I think that's where we are with JT.
That's the ultimate less Thor. Look, I was the president of the More Thor movement, and I think it's important to understand why I was the president of the More Thor movement, because I looked at him when he was drafted, and I didn't know, of course I didn't know when he was drafted about the Bouknight or Kai Jones or how all of that would turn out, but I looked at him and I said, man, 2nd round value, 6'9". I'm surprised this guy didn't get drafted before. He feels like one of those like guys that could that Toronto constantly turns into, borderline star players, because there's defensive effort there. There's some, at least mechanically, it looks like maybe there's a shot there that he becomes, a decent outside shooter, and he's got all the tools defensively, and he's blocking shots all over the place, and the athleticism is not like off the charts, but certainly is eye-popping, and like it all seemed like it was there, and he just couldn't progress as a player, particularly I think shooting and then knowing exactly where to be defensively. I think those are the 2 things that really stood out for me of like, oh man, that's why this guy can't get any run. Also, he never really got stronger. This is kind of my fear with Brandon Miller and a lot of guys where we go, okay, all he's got to do is get stronger. All he's got to do is put some weight on. I think Brandon Miller will do it. But some guys, you're just waiting, and it never happens, and they never really reach that, reach whatever ceiling they have because of that. And that was Clifford's big thing after his first year, was like, this guy's got to get stronger, but he's available. He'll play, nicked up. He will, kind of gives 100%. Like, he has all of this sort of intangible stuff. It's those darn tangibles like 3-point percentage and, things of that nature that really hurt him. His stats were so interesting, Walker, this season because, okay, well, let me just zoom out and talk about his stats overall. Offensively, his points per shot attempt, his first year was 102.5. That's 23rd percentile among forwards in the league. That dropped in his 2nd year to 98.3 points per shot attempt. That's 9th percentile, meaning like a bottom 5-ish in the league among forwards. And then this season, Cleaning the Glass recategorized him as a big because he played a lot of center this season, played a lot out of position because, once again, the Hornets went into an NBA season without an NBA-level big rotation. And so his points per shot attempt was 100, so slightly better than last year, but just slightly 8th percentile among bigs in the league. So he was super ineffective. But if you look at his game log, Walker, it was that low despite the fact that he went on an absolute tear to end the season. When the Hornets were mathematically eliminated from everything, he decided to start hitting 3-point shots, hitting corner threes all over the place. And out of his last 5 games, 4 of them were in the 90th percentile for points per shot attempt. He didn't score a ton, but he hit nearly everything that he put up. And it just makes you want to tear your hair out, especially if you were the president of a movement that was calling for him to get more playing time. It's like, where was this when we needed it?
JT Thor scored 20 points in his last game this past season.
9 rebounds, 40 minutes, 8 of 11.
Do you want to know? Yep. All of that is so true. You want to know what his career high is? 20 points that he scored in his last game this past season. If indeed that was his last game and he ended it by putting up a career high, then just amazing stuff from what JT was. I think the story about him is that we were pretty excited about what he could do, and that waned. And if we're talking about some of these other younger players that improve and they improve and they improve, man, we didn't get any of that on JT, right? Like, is there anything that we saw him improve on at all year after year? Like, Doug, it stayed damn stagnant if it didn't get worse in some situations. Like, I thought when Steve Clifford was named the head coach that JT Thor would kind of be a Cliff guy. Just thinking about him being toolsy and defensively, he had a block percentage that was pretty good amongst forwards his rookie season. There were some things to point to and say, okay, we got a shot. Now, especially with Steve Clifford, he was everybody's pick to be a Clifford darling compared to what James Borrego might have wanted from him. And it just never worked out, man. Never did. Because to a different team, but it's hard to believe that he'll have success elsewhere after watching him the last 3 years.
Right, because developmentally, Walker, you have to pick a path. And the path really forks in the road at you can stay as small as JT Thor stayed physically, but you got to shoot like 36, 37% from three. Or you get bigger, stronger. I can play you a little bit at center. Defensively, you can keep some guys away from the rim that are a little bit bigger and stronger. And he didn't pick either of those paths. He picked the path that leads him out of Charlotte and with another team.
Last thing, just looking at the game log as we're continuing to do, he got a shot at the beginning of this season just to kind of go with some of his minute totals. He posted 20 minutes of run in quite a few games at the beginning of the year. The first two, 20 and 24. You get to the seventh game, 20, 20, 23, 27, and then 22 in the 14th game of the season. You start to dwindle down a little bit. Did not play DNPCD. You have a 3-game run of getting about 20 minutes of run. And then after that, it's like 6 minutes, 5 DNPCDs all over the place. Just, yeah, it was one of those, we're going to try it out.
Well,
and then we're going to trade, and then you're going to have some injuries and you're still going to get some time because of the injuries. And all right, we're not playing you at all once we get some of these dudes in the trade deadline. That's it.
Well,
done.
and then at the trade deadline, they got Poku, which is kind of, again, talking about a path. Like, Poku's a little
bit after, too, by the way, because he's picked up. He wasn't even traded. So, yeah, even a little bit after the deadline.
Yeah, but theoretically, Poku is a good three-point shooter. That's kind of, he's not going to get any bigger, so he has to be playable offensively. He actually pass a little bit too, Poku can, and he can kind of run a break. I mean, we saw him.
He's a better player. Like, he looks like he should. Basically,
and he's taller.
Yeah,
he's taller.
Yeah.
He can block shots. And I mean, that's what I'm saying with JT Thor. He is in this awful middle where it's like, all right, has some defensive tools, but not really big enough, and he can't pass at all, and he can't shoot at all, except at the end of the season. And so, unfortunately, that's where I will say,
I hate it.
In his defense, he never threw the basketball at a referee thinking that he was a Charlotte Hornet, unlike Poku. He never made a Shackton, as far as I know.
No, man. And look, we really did. We just dumped on the kid, man. We just dumped on him for a whole segment. But just so everybody understands, we wanted it to work out.
Right.
Doug created a damn T-shirt. If there's anybody that wanted it to work out, it was Doug Branson.
It would have been gangbusters, man. I wouldn't even be on this podcast
right.
anymore if it had worked out. I would just be collecting T-shirt money. It would have been flooding the stands with More Thor. It was a beautiful T-shirt, and now all of that is gone. And so, yes, am I a little bit bitter? Am I taking it out on JT a little bit unfairly because I couldn't rake in that sweet T-shirt money? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. All right, let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
You guessed it. We got another mock draft. It's coming up next. Last segment, Locked On Hornets. Before we get to the last segment, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, whether it's big or small. When we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off of your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. If you're thinking of starting therapy, then give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can even switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you want to. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Let's get to another mock draft. Doug, I have to say, we definitely took a long break from doing the mock drafts every day. You have more than delivered and made up for it, because we have one. Every single show, we're bringing another one. I have to wonder if there are other podcast content creators that are just looking at us and thinking, man, are we just being lazy? Are we just going to the mock drafts and then just saying, hey, we'll do another segment? I know what your answer was going to be. I just wonder if that's what people think about it. But you promised the people, like, this is the thing. This is Chris Sims promising people that there are indeed 75 better quarterbacks than Blake Bortles and delivering every single day. This is your baby, and you've been doing a good job delivering on your baby.
Well, I appreciate that. And the answer to your question is yes, of course it is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%.
But right. I think we've learned a lot in this process. And the thing that I've learned the most is that no one has any idea what the Charlotte Hornets are going to do. And if that is a goal of this franchise right now, if they don't want fans, media, or any other team really knowing what the Hornets plan to do, if they want to throw up all of the smoke screens, right now it's working. Because I haven't seen any rumors about moving the pick. I haven't seen really any.
We've not been going fishing. We've not been going fishing at all, really. I mean, I maybe a little bit with the coaching stuff, but I wonder if that tackle box is just going to be put up and getting old and dusty in the garage. We're not going to bring it out again.
I don't know, because look, it's a new and that would make some sense, right? If it's a new regime and they've started to clean house. I mean, they're not going to announce they're announcing the hirings. They're not announcing the firings, folks. And, look, sources within the team often are these sort of guys that you don't know anything about, people that you don't know anything about. And right. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that you've had all of these new folks come in and all of a sudden some of the sourcing has dried up as people try to reestablish contacts within the new structure. So anyway, I've got something here from on3.com, and it looks like the title of this website is 5 Goats. I'm not sure why it's on3.com and the title of the website. I don't know. There's a lot.
Are we so far into the internet? Did you say you have a 5 Goats?
It's 5. I think the title of the website is called 5 Goats, but the URL is on3.com, and yep, I have a virus. I have a virus on my computer.
Yeah. Exit. Abort. Immediately.
The author is James Fletcher III, JF3Sticks. His Twitter handle is JDFletch3 if you want to follow him there. This one is fresh as of printing this episode, about 6 hours old here. And let's see what old 3-6 has for us here. Number 1, Alex Sarr. Number 2, Zachary Risachet. Number 3, Stephon Castle goes to the Houston Rockets. So no opportunity for the Hornets to take the guy that doesn't even want to play for the team. And then number 4, San Antonio Spurs, Nikola Topic. Number 5, Detroit Pistons, go Buzelis. Other than the one that we did with Wasserman saying Cody Williams was going to go to the Pistons, I've seen a lot of, I don't know if there's intel here, but I've seen a lot of mock drafts have Detroit taking Buzelis. So there you go. And then number 6, Charlotte Hornets select out of Kentucky, Reed Shepherd. And Fletcher writes, The Charlotte Hornets have hit in recent drafts, building out the outline of a core worthy of a playoff conversation. However, health and off-court issues have gotten in the way of tangible progress to this point. Perhaps that means they factor in fit more than a team typically in this range would, especially given the lack of top-tier talent to choose from. Reed Sheppard makes sense in checking all of these categories. He could slot in between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller well and provide an alternative to either for stretches if needed. The basketball pedigree and lack of off-court stories surrounding him also add value in this circumstance. The Hornets don't care about that. They don't care about lack of off-court stories. What are you talking about? They've proven, if anything, Walker, they've proven that they can endure basically anything.
Endure seems like the right word. Survive seems like the right word. Thrive? No. Thrive, not the right word. I'm trying to think of what would truly surprise me at this point. You paused with the Stephon Castle selection at number 3. I know why you paused. It's because he's been linked to the Hornets quite a bit. But I really don't know what would surprise me with a jumble in the top 5. Sarr falling to 3, that would be noteworthy. Other than that, Doug, I really don't know. I mean, at this point, we've gone through so many mocks. I've heard it all. I think Sarr falling to 3 or dropping outside the top 2 would be the only surprising thing at this point.
Yeah, I think Reed Sheppard has some top 10 cushion. Like, I don't see him having a fall. I think Donovan Clingan, if he gets into individual workouts and teams don't see shooting potential, I wonder if just like, can you take a traditional big today like Clingan if there's just no shot of him having a shot? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people have been talking about Clingan top 3, and then some have him as lottery. I mean, I think Clingan is the guy that if he gets by the Hornets, you're like, oh boy. I mean, and you see that every year. I mean, there's always one guy who was like, oh God, I thought this guy was going to go at least, top 8, top 9, and falls out of the top 10 completely. I think for me, Clingan's that guy. I don't think Reed Sheppard is that guy. I think the shooting talent is too elite for 10 teams to pass up on. And I hope the Hornets decide, because I don't see the fit.
Oh, with Reed, yeah.
I know with Reed, yeah. I don't see that fit. They need shooting. Defensive effort is there. My big concern with Reed Sheppard is offensively, is he going to be able to do anything but catch and shoot? Because of his size. Is he going to be able to really drive and finish? And maybe he surprises everyone and he's crafty enough to get it done early, and then he, puts on some muscle and is able to survive over the career. But I just think that's the linchpin between Reed Sheppard being, a utility guy, like a mini Doug McDermott, or is he going to be, some elite Devin Booker level talent? That to me is like the big, because he's not tall.
Yeah, so primary ball handler or secondary ball handler in the second unit right now. I mean, does he come in and you don't even want him handling the ball with the 6 through 8 guys out there? That's my question immediately. And then can he develop into somebody you trust handling the ball with the second unit, and then also being able to play off ball with the first unit? Where does he fit with your foundation players? So I'm with you. It's tantalizing, though, no doubt about it.
And I would ask you this: would he be the guy of the players we've mentioned? And we've mentioned a lot of players, including Tijon Solon, who was mocked to the Hornets and goes 8 in this draft to the San Antonio Spurs, which is where I think he's going to land because of Victor Wembanyama. But who would be the guy? Would it be Reed Sheppard, who the Hornets would take, and you would go, is Reed Sheppard at the top of that list, or is there another guy here that you look at and go, man, if the Hornets take him, I'm just going to be a little bit disappointed?
No, Reed Sheppard. I would be so interested in how that works, because the dude can shoot the hell out of the basketball.
Maybe Dillingham. So Dillingham would probably be the other Kentucky guy. Would be the guy you go, what are they thinking here?
Dillingham would be the guy that I'm most out on right now at that spot. I would tell you, like, drafting Donovan Clingan almost feels like eating your vegetables to me. I would totally get it. It's probably good for you, but it also wouldn't have me as excited as drafting some of the other prospects. It would totally be the side of broccoli. That's good. Like, I like broccoli. Broccoli's damn good, but it's like, I'm not looking forward as hell to eating the side of broccoli. And I think that's what it is. I get it, Doug. I hear you. I'm one of those guys that's wanting to shoot for the stars here. Even at, being at number 6, I just view a more exciting pick, even being a Reed Shepherd, but really Stephon Castle, Ron Holland, trying to see if that works. Maybe Cody Williams does pick up enough steam to where he makes sense out there on the wing. That's how I feel.
I'm gonna throw something out at you for your Klingon take and your Klingon disappointment, and everyone, including Rod Boone of the Charlotte Observer, who says you can't take Klingon because of fit, because you have Mark Williams already, and you have. I just want to throw this out there. I'm going to throw a couple of names out there that played center for the Charlotte Hornets last season. Okay,
I got you.
We'll go with the guy that we talked about earlier. JT Thor played significant minutes at the center position. PJ Washington, Grant Williams, who was one of their better centers this year. That's PJ, a plus.
Graham.
But then you can't rebound. Marquise Bolden played significant minutes at center for this team this season. The list goes on and on. And
give me the one. No, the one. Throw the hammer down here. Not the Thor hammer. Throw the Nathan Mensah hammer down. Throw that one down.
I must have trauma buried that because I was like, who's he talking? Oh my God, Mensah. Yeah, jeez.
I hear you.
But because it's just not just this past season. It's not just this season. This season was not an anomaly. We have been saying for 3 or 4 years now that the Hornets keep coming out, and this different people than there are today, but they kept coming out and looking us in the eyes and saying, we've got a shot at making the postseason. And then you look at the center rotation and you go, there's like 2 people there that can play. This can't be possible.
I am not disagreeing with you even. I totally understand the borderline necessity to draft Donovan Klingon. Necessity strong. The desire to draft him, I totally get it. For me, I'm trying to hit on the ultimate ceiling where everybody works out. And I get drafting your insurance here with Donovan Klingon, more like State Farm, okay? State Farm broccoli. That's how I view Donovan Klingon. It's nice. You got to have it, but I would rather do the more exciting thing and get Castle or some of these other guys, but it would make total sense, and I would not criticize the Hornets for it. I would totally understand it.
You know what's exciting? When your house burns down and you get to buy another house. That's exciting. When you crash your car into a brick wall and you get a new car, and hopefully you survived. Like, that's exciting. It's exciting. It's exciting when, oh my God, it's not exciting when your center gets injured or when anyone gets injured. But then it's exciting when you go, when you remember, oh, yes, we have this exciting prospect that can slot right in. That's exciting.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're tittillating. I'm not titillating.
I'm titillated by these vegetables.
Hornets. I do love vegetables usually, too. I love them. Absolutely. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first.
It's good that you get that on the record.
Just wanted to let people know because I don't hate Klingon. That's why. I wanted to let people know about it. Thanks for making us your first listen. Catch us anywhere you get your pods. We're on YouTube. Doug's on the internet, a website that isn't quite 5 goats good, but it's still pretty good. Every Hornets Boxscore.com. And you can listen to me on Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ from 12 to 3. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.